So the hardware items that we will be looking at are the following: the CPU, the storage and various partitions that are there, and the graphics card, memory modules, battery and its current status, network devices and the configuration. Now there is a bunch of packages that we need to install in order to use these tools. So here I am giving the names of those packages. So please go ahead and install these using apt-get install, and after that we are ready to try out these commands on our machine. I am assuming that we are going to use the laptop that we have to try these utilities. Often we notice that the battery performance of a laptop keeps decreasing with time, and it's a good idea to know how much of its capacity is still retained so that we can replace it before the prices for such a battery increase beyond our means, or before such batteries are not available in the market. Let us get started with the hardware diagnostics. The first tool we will be using is hwinfo. So if you have already installed that package, it would be available, and hwinfo is to probe for hardware. So when you run this, it would probe the hardware and dump a lot of output on the screen. So it's a good idea to write it to a file. So I would write it to hwinfo.txt, and then I will use the command less to look at the content. So page by page we could see the hardware information. So you could see that we have information about the processors. So and then we have information about PCI devices that are plugged in, and we also have information about the partitions that are there in the system. And here you see the headphones that I am using, JBL Quantum 300. It's also detected here as one of the devices, USB device. And then the Dell keyboard is detected here. And the tablet on which I am doing this recording, that's a vacuum tablet, that's also recognized, and so on. So you could actually look at this file to know more details about the hardware. Now there are some more commands that we have, so let us look at them. So lshw is also one more such utility, list hardware, and let us look at that. So it's again dumping the output on the screen, which is quite large. So I write the output to the text file, and using the command less I would go screen by screen. So you can now see that the way the information is displayed is slightly different compared to the other tool, but it is a little bit easier because it has limited information. So you could now see that this information is coming in various sections. So we could also ask the information to come to be displayed in a particular section also. So for example, you could ask for display, and only for display it would tell what is the information that is available. Now if you are interested to know more about only the CPUs, that is also available in the proc file system, CPU info. So you simply cat that file and you have got the information about the processors that are available, and the information here contains many flags which actually tell the capability of the CPU, and the cache memory here tells you how good the machine is going to work for heavy computation. So some of the processors like Xeon would have a cache memory that is significantly larger. So let us look at that by logging into a machine which has a Xeon processor. So this one, for example, is a Core i3. So I log in now to a machine which is just beside this particular desktop, and there I look at this option, and you can see that the cache size here is roughly about 12 megabytes, and that is because this is a Xeon processor. So you can see that one can actually get more details about the CPU and its finer hardware details using these commands, which are also available in multiple forms. What are the various partitions that are created in the storage device attached with this computer can also be listed. So you could test /proc file system has a partition information also, and it will list you what are the various partitions, including the loop devices, which are meant for usually snap packages, and you also have the block sizes that are listed here. Now, how many block type devices are available? How many storage devices are available? So that is available using lsblk command, and I would like to ask it to give me the name and the size. So all the block devices are listed, and here a nice display is available. Here it says that the storage is about 1 TB, and there are 7 partitions, and each of those partitions, what is the size, is now listed here. So it's slightly more easy to read. Now let us look at this also in the other machine that I was referring to. So lsblk -o name comma size. So here you can see that the storage devices are actually 2. One of them actually has a 21.9 terabytes, and the other one has half a terabyte. So there are 2 devices, and the one which is 21.9 terabytes is actually a RAID device, which we will learn about in one of the following modules. Now, what are all the various PCI devices that are connected to this computer? So that is known from the command lspci. So you can see the list of various hardware items, and there are some bridge adapters. There is a graphics card that is installed, and then you have some things that are recognized here. For example, the Ethernet card. So the Ethernet controller, which is for the network connectivity with the LAN, that is installed, and you also have a sound device, a Realtek, and then there's a wireless device also, serial number 3165, that is coming from Intel. So most of the hardware items that are plugged into the motherboard using the PCI bus can also be listed here. Now there is a command called free, which would tell you some details. It will tell you about how much of memory is free and how much of swap memory is unutilized, and this means that there is a certain amount of memory that we have, of which something is used and something is free. So you can make out here that this computer has about 32 GB of RAM, and I have usually it's a practice to have double the memory as a swap storage, and that's why it is about roughly double the size of the memory that I have created here. If you want to know how is this memory installed, how many DIMM modules are actually used to have this RAM available in the computer, you also have a utility to know that. This is a information coming from quite deep within the operating system, so super user permissions may be required. So dmidecode is utility, and I want to have that for the memory. Okay, so you now see that the memory information is coming out, and you have got the maximum capacity 32 GB, and this 32 GB is given in 2 DIMM modules, so the DIMM 1 and the DIMM 2. So there are 2 modules, that is 2 16 GB memory modules that are installed, and each of these have a lot of information coming up. For example, what is the voltage and what is the speed of that particular memory device, and using this number you can also find out who is the manufacturer, and so on. So 16 GB DIMM slot, first one, type DDR4 with a speed of 2400 MT per second and operating at 1.2 volts. This is the information that we need when we want to add one more DIMM module by procuring it in, let us say, Amazon. Now, but the form factor also is important, because the memory can come in small and large formats for desktop and laptop computers. So this form factor is also something that you may want to look at. So let us look at this form factor in the other computer that I have. So you can see that here there are multiple items. So naturally this is a bigger computer, so it has more DIMM modules occupied, and this has 64 GB memory actually, and the DDR4 memory has a form factor which says DIMM and not SODIMM. So that is a difference. So the computer on which I am actually recording is a Dell all-in-one. So it has a memory module which is smaller in size, which is same as laptop one. But the computer where I am showing you information is actually a workstation where the memory module is large one. So one needs to basically keep an eye on those details also. And you also make out that it's a bit faster, because the speed is listed here as slightly more. There is also a utility called hwinfo, which is basically a GUI utility. So I don't have it yet, so let me get it. This is a graphical way of looking at the same information that we have been seeing till now. So nothing more is anyway available, but it may be slightly easier for you to look at if the computer is right in front of you. So here is the information, and you can see that all the hardware items on the left, and you can click each of the items and look at whatever is the information that is available from the diagnostics. So this is a very nice utility. However, the command line utility is also pretty good. It has all the information in a textual form for you to note down. Now, what kind of a graphics card we have? So for that we need a utility called clinfo, and it tells you about the kind of libraries that are supported by the graphics card. So we have only a Intel hardware here, built-in graphics card, so it doesn't have too many features. However, I can log into my laptop where I have this information, which is going to be slightly different, because there the graphics card is different. So log into the laptop there. Okay, it was sleeping, so I just, yeah, so laptop was actually going to sleep. So yeah, so here we can look at it. So here you can see that the laptop, when I run, it has slightly more information coming up. So it has slightly different information that is displayed, the version number supported, and what is the processor that is used for computing the GPU languages such as OpenCL or CUDA in the case of NVIDIA hardware. So those can be displayed. So it's a good idea to run these to know. Now there is a utility called upower, which is used to know about the battery status. So I have now logged on to the laptop, so I look at that. So upower and -E option tells us what are the various battery devices. Okay, so you see that there are a bunch of them, and of these, this particular device looks like a battery device. So now I run with that particular device name. -I option is required. So now what we can see is that this is a laptop with a battery that is with a type model called Dell CR72X11, and right now the state of the battery is it is discharging. That means it is not powered on to the mains, and it is battery is actually running the computer, and the full capacity, design capacity is 95 watt hours, and when it is fully charged it is 81, which means that we have lost about 7 or 8% of the capacity already, and with time this number will keep coming down. And it also tells in terms of percentage how much of battery power is still retained and how much time it is to empty that particular battery. Right now actually the computer was running something, so it was showing such a time, but it would actually increase that time. You can see that time to empty is now 34 hours, simply because when I first started the command, it just started to run some utilities, so it was CPU was going full blast, so it showed as if only 2.1 hours is available, but after some time when we ask again, it says that there are 34 hours available. So this battery capacity, I know it's about 8 hours capacity at a normal usage. Now what I do is that watch this state, it says discharging, so I will just switch on the power and then we will look at that again. Okay, so I just switched on the adapter, and now let us look at it, and you now see that the state has changed. It says it is charging now. Okay, so this is how, in fact, by just command line utilities you can know what is happening to the battery system and how much of capacity is still remaining. So this 93 becomes, let us say, 40 or 30. That means that it's about time to replace the battery. Okay, so diagnostics on the battery at this level of details are not possible using a graphics utility on Windows. Also, if you right click also, nothing much will be shown, but this is great. You can see a lot of details. Some of the hardware devices that are installed like storage can be of different types. So you can have a SATA hard disk or you can have a SSD hard disk. The difference between these is in terms of the speed. So let us see how we can detect that. So I want to now run the hard disk parameter check on the device called SDA, so which is the only hard disk we have here. So it would run those diagnostics and show you by sending the data and receiving the data, it will tell you what is the kind of speed at which that particular device is operating. So you can see that the reading from the disk is about 127 megabytes per second, but from the cache is about 6 GB per second. So that is the peak speed is 6 GB per second. Okay, so I have only one disk SDA, which is actually a SATA disk. Now I will log on to my workstation where I have two types of disks, and there we will see what this kind of information would look like. Now the SDA in this workstation is actually a RAID device, so I expect slightly better speed. So let us look at that. So you could see that the disk read is actually almost 4 times faster than on the first device that I tried, and the peak speed is also slightly better. It's about 7.5 Gbps. So the reason why it is so fast is also because this is a RAID array, and we will learn about that in a moment. But I also have another device which is SDB, which is a SSD disk, and you will see that these numbers will be quite different in that situation. So now you see that the buffer disk read is twice that of the first disk that I did earlier, and it's not a RAID disk, it's a single disk, and the reason why it is faster is because it is actually a SSD device. Okay, so one can actually also perform metrics on the hardware devices in this manner, which helps us understand the capacity of our hardware. Now, one last thing that I would like to show you also about the IO statistics. So iostat happens to be coming from a package which I have not installed in the server. So I just have that come in. And here are the speeds that we can look at. So when your computer is busy and you are suspecting that perhaps there is a lot of work that is happening between the CPU and the storage devices, then you can look at these numbers to compare them with an ideal time numbers to see if it was really a lot of IO operations that are happening, the input output operations that are happening. Now regarding the network, ifconfig is a utility which will tell you what kind of a network configuration we have. So on this machine I have got an Ethernet connection, a wired connection, which is having an IP address which is falling in the 10-point series, and then a loopback device which is like 127.0.0.1. So we will learn about these addresses in a moment, but I just want to show you that this information as a part of hardware is also available. So I hope you can make out that a lot of information about your hardware is available at the fingertips, and by having these packages installed and keeping these names of utilities handy, you can diagnose the details about your hardware, and in case you need to replace any of those, you can also look up the specs so that you can get compatible items for replacement when you need to.